Good morning. We're learning the Schutz for Shlema for Ilana Chaya Bas Serach. Got it right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. We are on Daf Tes Vav Amud Aleph, three lines to the bottom. Rav Huna Zavin Hahi Para La'ovet Keichav. Rav Huna. Now we're going to be talking about the Isser that we've spoken about in the Mishnah. We said you can't sell a large animal, a behemoth gasa, to Ovid Kechavim because we're afraid that the Ovid Kechavim will come to then rent or lend such an animal to the Ovid Kechavim, and they'll use it on Shabbos, and you're mechuyev on Shvisa of your behemoth. Nevertheless, Rav Huna Zavan Hi Para Ovid Kechavim. He did so. So Rashi says, so what was his heter? My time why did you do such a thing? He says, no, I think that they bought it. I believe it's possible they bought it to shecht it. If they're going to shecht it, it's not going to ever be there on Shabbos, and therefore we don't have to worry about the possibility you'll come to lend it or rent. Zak Rashi, the Talina Nakula Masisa Behema Tmeya. The Mishnah, the first shot that Rashi says, the Mishnah is talking about a Behema Tmeya, an animal that's not normally shechted. I mean, even goyim that are not mechuyev to eat kosher, they usually don't eat horses and donkeys and such things. They eat, but a cow they will eat. So afilu b'stama. So Rav Huna is saying that when you sell a cow, you don't have to worry that they're going to keep it for work. You can assume it's going to be used for shechita. It's a big chiddush. Is going to hope this second shot in Rashi is going to drive a big hole in the Mishnah. He says even a behema tahira, the Mishnah only said that you're chayiv with the Ovid Kechavim said specifically he's buying it for work, but he buys it stam. We can assume he's going to shecht it, so people are not going to ever have the opportunity to see that he's holding it around. First of all, he's not going to use it for work, and second of all, people are not going to see him holding it around and assume that you can also rent or lease to an Ovid Kechavim. It's almost like an exception that swallows the rule when we're saying that behema tahiris. Well, we already excluded a sus from this, according to one man, the Amar, because a sus is chayna says atzmai. And now we're saying the only cases that will be users will be if you sell a donkey, which I guess maybe a donkey is not ridden, but I don't know if where a donkey would fall, or if you have like a rhinoceros, maybe. I don't know what other behemoth tmeis there are that are domesticated that a person would sell to an Ovid Kechavim. We're saying that they're only, because we're saying a behemoth tahira is only when where the guy specifically says he's holding on to it. Okay. But that is the explanation of Rav Huna. Zok the Gemara. And I mean, the explanation of Rav Huna is that he says you could say talina and that he's going to shecht it. The explanation of how it jibes with the Mishnah is a separate question, which I just find interesting. But now the Gemara asks about the basic thesis of Rav Huna, that he says you can sell to an Ovid Kechavim and expect that it's going to be shechted. Where do we know that you can assume that when something is sold under circumstances where it's not allowed to be held, that you can make an assumption it's going to be shechted? It's not. This is talking about a person cannot sell a para that does harisha, that's used for plowing, a cow that's used for plowing. On Shvius, Rashi says, Yisrael, Rashi, Yisrael HaChashel HaShvius. if you have a Yisrael that's not, it means an Amoritz who's possible to potentially could do such a thing. You're not allowed to sell him a para that's used. If you're selling a para on Shvius that's used for plowing, you have a pretty good idea that this Yisrael, who's chashad al Shvius, is going to use it for plowing. And so therefore it's lifneiver. Beis Hillel matirin, but Beis Hillel says even though it can be used, it's able to be used for plowing. It's also able to be used for food, and you can depend on it that it's going to be geshachte. So this is the basis. We pass on like Beis Hillel, and Beis Hillel is saying as far as shvius, when you sell an animal, you can depend on it that it's going to be used for meat and not be kept and used and not be over on lifnei iver. So too over here in our case, when we're talking about the Isser of Shvisis Behemtoi, also we say you can depend that the animal is going to be geshacht. You could be talin and lakula. Since there exists a possibility, you can depend on that to be mat. Amar Rabba. Rabba says, we're 4 lines down on Tezvav Mebeis. Amar Rabba, mi dami, hasam ein adam mitzaval Shvisis Behemtoi b'Shvius. He says that it depends on what the character of the Isser is. When we're talking about the Isser, it's given that it's true that it's a Isser d'Rabbanan, the Chama being geyser, because maybe you'll come to be Shayel. But if you'll be Shayel or to Seicher or Behema on Shabbos. But if someone were to do that, a person will be over under the Eraisa that his behema is not allowed to work on Shabbos. But over there, a person is not mechuyev on shvisis behemte b'shvius. It's purely a lifnei iver that, and the chacham be'etzem midaraisa, a person is only mechuyev on lifnei iver when it's 99% certain that the thing is going to happen. It's all a takanas chachamim that we extend it to cases where it's possible that the person will stumble. So now we're saying it's a compilation, it's a conflation of two derabbanans, meaning the lifnei iver here is be'etzem a derabbanan, because it's certainly not 100% certain that any of these things are going to happen, that the person is going to plow with the animal. And even if he does plow with the animal, you're not mechuyev for shvisis behemta. He doesn't. That's not a deraisa. That's his. That's all. It's all dependent on the lifnei iver.
But he's not allowed to plow on shvius. So then, what?
The other person is not allowed to plow on shvius. The person who's buying it is not allowed to plow on shvius. The yid. But you're only mechuyev al lifnei iver. You're selling as lifnei iver, and that lifnei iver is be'etzem derabbanan, because we say that lifnei iver b'daraisa only applies when something is 99% certain it's going to happen, and that's not the case. Even leaving aside the fact that he might shech the animal, even without that, you don't know 90. It's not imminent that if you sell an animal, he's certainly going to plow with it. The animal could break its leg. He could get out of the business, or maybe he never intended to plow with it. He just wanted to own the animal.
And by Shabbos?
I'm sorry?
And by Shabbos?
Shabbos is not lifnei iver. Shabbos is takanas chachamim. The chachamim masakin that you shouldn't do it because maybe you'll come to eventually be over on Shavisa, right? That maybe someone will come to rent or lend on Shabbos. So the kernel of that is a deraisa. If a person actually ends up renting to someone who uses it on Shabbos, the owner of the animal will be over on a deraisa. Could be b'shoigig, but it's a deraisa. So that's the chiluk he wants to make. At least that's the way. It's a very complicated. Obviously it's a complicated understanding of what these sheets are. I think what I'm saying is at least close to what Rashi is saying. But other Rishonim have different explanations. So Amalei Abaya, So Rab is basically saying two things. He's asking, or he's disagreeing with Rav Huna. He said, how could you have sold an animal basing on the fact that it could be geschachten because of Beis Hillel Shita, that he says that you could sell a behema that's chareshes on Shvius. It's Rabbah says that where it's mitzvah al shvisis behemtai, where you have an actual isser of shvisis behemtai, it's also so. But a behema, there's no shvisis behemtai. So he said that should be mutter. And over here, where a person is mitzvah al shvisis behemtai al legabe Shabbos, it's also. So Abaye disagrees. Amalei Abaye b'chol heicha the other mitzvah aser. Is it true that whenever there is an isser to use the actual thing on Shabbos, or for whatever reason, that it's aser? Farisada. What about a field? We were talking about selling a behema, where a behema you're not mechuyev if your behema does work on a field in Shvius. But Arisada, the other mitzvah al Shvius is Sadea b'Shvius. If someone were to rent a field and it would be used on Shvius, he'd be over on Midaraisa on al Shvius Sadeu. There is a parallel isser, just like this. Your behemoth is not allowed to be used on Shabbos. Your sod is also not allowed to be used on Shvius, and therefore the same thing would apply that you can't rent your behemoth to be used on Shabbos. You also can't rent your sada to be used on Shvius. And even so, nevertheless, adam sada near b'Shvius. One is not. Beishamai says you're not allowed to sell your plowed field on Shvius because the person who you're selling it to, we're talking about again a person who's chashed al Shvius, a yid who's chashed al Shvius, will use it. He'll plow. He'll actually plant in the field. Basil matirin. Basil says it's mutam nishiyachal ha'ivira. Basil says sometimes people, similar to the way we say that sometimes people, it's not exactly parallel. It's a little less likelihood. But just like we say, when a person buys a animal, sometimes he could shaft it. People also rotate their crops, and sometimes they buy a field, and even though it's could be used, they leave it for the year because they wanted to have a bigger crop the next year. So maybe that's what he's going to do with this field. So therefore, Beis Hillel says talina and lakula and wamater. Now again, so Abai is asking. This is a case where the actual it's more similar. It's your mitzvah al shvisasai, where the kernel of this isser is an isser that devolves on you midaraisa. If you were to rent out your field and it would be used, you'd on Shvius, you'd be mechayev. So why is Beis Hillel, according to Rabbah, who says that it's always aser when the kernel of the isser, the isser stems from something that you yourself are mitzvah on midaraisa. So you should have the same problem over here. How could you depend on the fact that maybe bitalin and lakula depend to be lenient because of the possibility that the person will let the field lie fallow? Maskul Ravashi, and Ravashi asks us an additional question on Rabbah. On the other part, the other branch of Rabbah, the Rabbah says where a person is not mitzvah, where it's just because of lifnei iver, which is inherently a derabanan. It's not inherently derabanan, but for practical purposes, it's derabanan because lifnei iver is only when it's totally imminent that the person's going to do the thing. Is it true that wherever it's Eina Mitzvah Shari Vari Kalim, the Eina Mitzvah Shvisas Kalim, we'd said that a Sada, there's a Chiyav that you can't allow your Sada to be used on Shemitah. But no such Isser exists Legabe farming implements. Vari Kalim, the Eina Mitzvah Shvisas Kalim B'Shvias, Utnan, Elu and Kalim She'enad Meshayla Moicham B'Shvias. These are the things that a person can't sell on Shvias because a din of Lifnei Yiver, Hamachrisha. It refers to a plow. b'chol kelea, and all the different things that are used together, all the different parts of a plow, ha'oil, the yoke, v'hamizra, v'hadakar, other things that are used for helping to plow a field. So all these things, if you sell them on Shvius, now there's no such thing as hayvira, there's no such thing as rotating tools. There's no reason for a person to buy a tool unless he's going to use them immediately. And we say that he's over lifnei, but there's no. Again, this is a person could buy a tool. Maybe he will leave it for next year, even though there's no rational explanation. It's not enough to be a deraisa. There's still, as long as there's any possibility that it won't be used, that's not lifnei deraisa. It's only derabanan, and it's not. He's not mitzuv al shmisas kalim. So according to Rabba's formulation, these things should be mutter. So that's Rav Ashi's question. Elam Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi explains slightly differently. He says that it all depends on the chances, meaning that it's less likely that someone who buys a plow or buys a tool on Shvius, there's no reason to assume anything's going to happen to it other than be used on Shvius. So that the Chachamim holds lifnei iver. It doesn't depend on what the core of the Isser is, of whether it's a deraisa, whether it's lifnei iver, or whether it's mitzvah al Shvisas kelim. It depends on how likely the thing is to happen. So, Legabe a behema being bought, there Rav Huna would hold that there is a significant likelihood that it's going to be used for shchita. We can say that. But where Legabe buying, like for example, the tools, that's not likely that it's being used for a heter. It's much more likely that it's going to be used for doing work on Shemitah, and therefore it's lifnei iver. So then we don't care about all the other cheshbonos. What we care about is the likelihood, which is, for us, that's really the most rational way to do it. It's sort of the most logical way to do things. The takana will be based on how likely the outcome is. Okay, now we're going to talk about a different question that's related to this one. Until now, we've been talking about whether you can sell something to someone who's likely to use it. Now we're going to talk about an intermediary where you're selling something to someone where that person might sell it. So the question is, are we geyser in that case? Rabba zavinahu chamra li Yisrael hachashad limka loivet kechav. Rabba sold a donkey. A donkey is a behema gasa, and a behema gasa. This is a behema gasa that could be used for work on Shabbos. He sold to Yisrael, and the Yisrael, we're not chayshish. Yisrael is going to work on Shabbos, so he's not over for a first order isser of we talked about the isser to sell a behema gasa to a guy. But this Yisrael is a little weak, he's a little wobbly, and he's chashed that he would sell it to a guy. But nevertheless, Rabba sold it. My time marachi. Why did you do this? Why aren't you worried that you're going to cause that you should be chayshish for that he's going to resell it? Amalei, I know Yisrael Zavini. I sold it to a Yid. What's the problem? I'm not over. He said, but he could sell it to a guy. So Rabbi said back to him, I don't know that he's going to sell it to a guy. Maybe he'll get a better deal from a Yid. Now, right, now Abai was telling himself, Yidim are too, Yidim never buy from a Yid. They know they're getting a better deal when they go get from a guy. And it's vice versa. And the guy will yeah. So, but anyway, Rabbi said, I don't have to be chayshish, that I have to worry about where he's going to resell it to. I can be told he'll sell it to a yid. Eisvei, fragt the Gemara, makom shenogu limka behemedaka lekusim. So this is going to take us a while to get to the raya, but we're going to talk about the contrast between the treatment of kusim and the treatment of oived kechavim. Kusim are non-Jews who were megayer. They're called gerei arayis. They were scared of the lions. They wanted the benefits of being part of civilized society, that the Yidden were able to protect their people. So they wanted those benefits, but they weren't really such sincere converts. So they were megayer under the threat of lions, but they did not follow all the mitzvahs. So Zaktam, Makam Shenogu Limka Behemedaka Lakusim Meichel. Shaloi Limker Ein Meichel. The places where the minig was to sell a small animal to kusim, you do sell, and a place where they don't sell it, they don't sell. So the raya is, why is it that you wouldn't sell to kusim? L'chayra, it's because they were afraid they're going to resell. As we're going to say, the normal isser of a behema daka is that of Ravia, that we're worried about mishkav behem. But as we're going to prove, kusim are not chashad al Ravia. So therefore, the only possible problem that could be is that they'll resell the behema daka to a guy. So l'chayra, this is shver on Rabbah, that he said we don't have to be chayshish on reselling, because maybe the kusi will sell to a yid. But anyway, first we have to prove that kusim are not chashad araviyah. So, my time, why is it that you're not allowed to resell this behemadaka? Why that you can't sell the behemadaka in some places to a kusi? If you'll say that they themselves are chashad araviyah, or mi chashidi, it's not the case. Vatanya, you're not allowed to place behemoths in the inns of Avdik Chum, in the stables. You can't do even a zachar with a behemoth zachar with a avodas kechavim zachar, or nekeva by an avodas kechavim nekeva. And certainly where there's more of a Yetzirah for Ravia, where you're putting a female animal by a male of his kechavim, or vice versa, where there's more of a Yetzirah. So you're not allowed to do that by Ovid kechavim. Similarly, you can't give a behema to their raya because of the chashash to a shepherd because of chayshish for Ravia. Also, one cannot be miyached with an oived kechavim. You can't sequester yourself with oived kechavim because of the threat of shvichas damim. If they have the chance and no one can see, they might kill you. And one cannot give a child for them to be alone with a tutor who's going to teach them math, or they're going to teach them occupation, a vocation. All these things are mutter by kusim as opposed to Avdik Chacham. It's certainly going to be mutter where it's the same gender. And you can also give your behema to their raya, because they're not chayshish. We're not chayshish kusim araviyah. And when we yachad with them, we're not worried about shvichas damim. So you see from all this that kusim are not chashid araviyah. In addition, we learned so this is a raya. So that's the raya that, not like Rabbah. So the reason why there's a minig not to sell him a behemedaka must be because of the chashash that kusim will resell it. So why was Rabbah mater himself to resell? Another question. We don't sell to goyim, not weapons and not klei zayin, the things, let's say a quiver for an arrow, something that held accessory for a weapon. We don't sharpen their weapons for them. These are all different things that are used, handcuffs and shackles and chains that are used for imprisoning people. Shel Basel, made out of metal. Echad Oived Kechavim, ve'echad Kusi. Both an Oived Kechavim as well as a Kusi. My time. What's the reason? If you'll say you can't sell it to a Kusi because of Choshesh Ashvichas Damim, but from that previous brisa that we just quoted, we saw that not Choshesh Ashvichas Damim, because one of the things was we said that you can't be miyachad with Oived Kechavim, and you can be miyachad with a Kusi. You can't be miyachad with a Kusi because we're not Choshesh Ashvichas Damim. Elam Mishum the Asel is Vuna Oived Kechavim. Because they'll resell it. The problem must be why you can't sell weapons is because they're going to resell them to Oived Kechavim. And if you'll say, you can't compare what we say that you can't sell to a Kusi and therefore extrapolate from that because Kuti we're afraid they're going to resell. And Rabbah said, but he sold to Yisrael that's chashid that he's chashid to resell, that's chashid ala shmita that he'll resell to a guy. But I'm sorry, not a shmita. That was talking about a behema gasa. But he says that maybe there's, even though the kusim are not chashid on shvichas damim and they're not chashid on revia, but they are chashid that they're not very God fearing. So they're not going to care about who they sell to. But a yid, even if he's somebody who's chashid that he's not careful about shmita, he can still do teshuva, and maybe we can be taila. He's not going to sell to a guy. He has a choice. He can sell to a yid. There's always a chance that he'll realize he's making a mistake. But a kusi, we don't think about that because they're not really inherently yarei shemayim. But that can't be. We have a direct memory from Nachum B'Shem Rav Avua that it's also to sell to Yisrael a clay zayin if he's chashid that he's going to sell it to Rav Kechavim. So we see the Isser a Yisrael who's chashid. We don't assume he's going to do tshuva and he's going to have regrets and then not sell to a guy, he'll rather sell to a yid. So Rabbah was convinced by all these arguments. Rod Basrei Tlasa Parsi. Rabbah chased after the guy that he had sold his donkey for 3 parsoim, which I think it's something like 10 miles. He could be parsa b'chala. He ran after him a whole parsa in sand. But he didn't reach him. He missed his chance, and regretfully he was left with the potential having done the wrong thing. Just like it's also to sell to an Oived Kechavim, also limka listim Yisrael. Just like we said, it's also to sell weapons to a guy, it's also to sell it to a Jewish criminal. Heichidami, either chashed the katel, if we're chashish that the Jewish criminal he's a murderer, he's a real thug. Pshita, hainu Oived Kechavim. He's not. How is it any different than Oived Kechavim that will chashish to kill Yisrael, who's chashed on killing? We know, he's John Gotti, so certainly he'll be equally also to kill because of lifnei iver. Be the like katel, and if he doesn't kill, amai loy. Why can't you sell him a clay zayin? He's not going to use it on a yid. There's no lifnei iver. La'olam deloy katel. It's someone who doesn't sell. We're talking about a burglar. The zimin da avid latzuli nafshi. Sometimes he'll use the weapon to protect himself if he's caught. Rashi has an interesting thing. He says, "La'olam deloy katel mashmuta da avid latzuli nafshi. Listim hashoymit mama miyad bailav. The nimla of a hoylach. That it's a burglar that he sneaks money from the owners and he tries to get out. When they chase after him, he'll stand up for himself and fight back. And he's going to cause him to lose money. He says the Isser is not because of the possibility that this burglar, Yisrael, is going to kill. Because if there's any potential that he's going to kill, it's the same thing as an Oived Kechavim. We already said he's not chosher to kill, but he'll fight back with it, and we'll be able to get him. He'll be able to escape, and he's causing Yidden to lose money, and that's a lifnei iver, that he's helping him steal money, which is obviously us. We'll go a little bit further. Tanarabban, ein Michael and Treason. You're not allowed to sell non-Jews shields. This is interesting. This is a big thing going on in Eretz Yisrael. The Israel is going to sell the iron beam, and there's the iron shield, and all these things, the arrow, and we all know the names of the different protective missiles. So can you sell a shield to a guy? He says no. Some say you can't sell a shield. My time. If you'll say because it protects him, if that's the case, you shouldn't be able to sell them. Meaning, we don't want people to strengthen the Avdei Kechavim, because that will make them more able to battle. And when they come battle against Jews, they're going to be matzliach. If that's the case, you shouldn't be able to sell them wheat or barley, because that also strengthens them. Amarav, Efsher Hachanami. If it was possible to avoid Ava and not sell anything, help Goyim at all, then in Hachanami you should do so. But typically it's not the case. But shields, since he says it's possible to make a rule not to sell them, because they understand that we're enemies and that's why we don't sell them. It's not going to make extra Ava. It's mut. Therefore, you're not allowed to sell them. Ikad Amri Tristan Hainu Time Deloy. The reason why you can't sell a shield, once they lose their swords and their bows and arrows, they're going to fight with whatever they have, and then they'll use their shields. So therefore, it's lufnei iver. You can sell them shields. The chishalom zinayu ma'arak arki. No, once they lose any ability to wage offensive wars, they're just going to throw down their shields and run away. So we're not concerned that they're going to use them to fight, and therefore it is mutter to sell them shields. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi Ravu, halacha ki yeshem. The halacha is we are allowed to sell shields. Okay, we'll stop over here. Yeah, and we'll continue Bez Hashem tomorrow at 7:15.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Have a good day.
Good day.